Welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Mr. Trey Hensley. How's it going, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. We've been kind of messaging, doing some back and forth. You've been quite a busy guy. You know, I'm happy you took the time to finally get on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a hectic couple of years.
Oh, dude. Well, you know, and that's I've tried to explain this to some of my friends and stuff that, you know, are maybe trying to get into like the social media or maybe just the musical endeavor in general. You are always working. There's like no downtime. It's 24/7, 365. You always have something going on.
Yep, that's 100% the truth.
So for those that might not know who you are, maybe we can kind of get a little of your backstory, kind of how you came up, when you started playing music, and then we can kind of just progress from there if that's good with you.
Sure, man, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I started playing guitar quite a few years ago. I started when I was 10. I've been kind of doing this, professionally since then. I've not long after I started playing, I got to play on the Grand Ole Opry with this guy Marty Stewart, and who's one of the greats of country music, and Earl Scruggs, who was my kind of original guitar hero. And just kind of progressed from there. I got to play with Johnny Cash when I was a kid, and then I started kind of touring, right around my high school years, and I've never stopped.
Very nice.
Minus the couple years ago, it's been pretty nonstop. It's like but that's kind of the way I think everybody that is a musician, that's your ultimate thing anyway, is that you got to tour. And so that's been it, and been really busy the past probably 10 years especially, but I would kind of really focus in on the last 3 or 4 that have been just really incredibly busy. So just lucky to get to do it.
Oh, absolutely. That's got to be kind of you got quite a jump start on a lot of most musicians, you know what I mean? Usually those guys are grinding away for years and years. Not that you weren't, but you know what I'm saying,
No, I get it. It was definitely a very fortunate way to kind of begin this whole thing, and I'm very grateful for that. I got to meet a lot of very cool people early on, and that really jump started everything.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, I love watching that video of you at the Opry. You know what I mean? It's such a cool thing to see online, I can't remember quite when I first found out about you, but I think that was, I saw your stuff, I believe, on Instagram, and I was like, dude, this guy is killer. And then I started doing a little bit more research, and then I was like, holy crap, man. We got some fresh-faced young kid playing at the Opry over here now, man, in 2001, 2, something like that?
Yeah, that was 2002.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of blown away by that, man. And it's a symptom of the time we live in. There are so many great players. There's so much access to information now too. It's like you see some people pop up, and next thing you know, you just do a deep dive into their catalog. So
yeah, so. It's a great thing. I mean, there's there are a lot of players, a lot of music being made. That it can be overwhelming. To find new stuff or new people, and I think it's a great time, because there are I didn't embrace it for a long time, but there's a lot of value in the social media stuff where it's it helps you discover new things and new people, and so
Well, it also kind of helps connect with the artist. You know what I mean? Back in the day, it was just either the album cover or the vinyl artwork or whatever it was, maybe an article in a magazine that you were reading. But now, I mean, especially like a lot of the stuff you do on Instagram, we'll hang out and we're just kind of sitting out on the front porch with you. That's kind of the vibe that we get whenever I see you pop up,
Well, that's kind of by, I wouldn't say by design, but it's kind of just the way, I never wanted to do anything that hasn't been organic.
Sure, absolutely.
And I feel like the music that I play is, that's sort of it. If you're outside of the organic frame of mind, then you're not doing it right. So,
absolutely.
It's I kind of enjoy it, because it started as one of these things where it was, I just was on the road, I think, and just practicing. One of the ways I was practicing at the time was just trying to record my right hand to make sure,
Okay.
just to see if everything was moving right, and I was having some right arm issues at the time. It's, I don't know what year that was, but anyway, I just recorded a little video, and then I thought, well, I'll just put it up online. And then it sort of started as that, and even now that's sort of what it is. It's just me at home with whatever I'm working on for the day. There's no ulterior motive, and there's no list of here's what I'm going to do next week. It's, if I feel like recording something, I'll record something, or if I don't, then it doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's one of the most important things is if you're going to be on social media, you need to be honest, authentic, be yourself, and if that's just what
Yeah.
you're doing. And the way I've always kind of looked at it as a guitar player, especially, or any musician, you have a video diary of everything you're
Yeah.
doing. You know what I mean? You can kind of pick out little nuances, and you can, if you wanted to just do it just for yourself, that's what it's there for.
Yes.
And if other
Yeah.
people happen to like it, that's even better. That's just kind of icing on the cake at that point, man.
Yeah, it's a tool. I mean, it can be, you know, it can be frustrating sometimes, if you let it be.
Sure.
Just getting feedback in real time, especially if it's not, the best feedback, then it's, it can kind of get old quick.
Sure.
But you just kind of got to take everything with a grain of salt, and just keep your head down into what you're doing. I mean, I've always just been really motivated to get better at playing the guitar, and at the end of the day, that's what everything has been about as far as my musical presence. So, just trying to get better.
Well, and see, I really like that about a lot of players that I'm following right now, especially you yourself. It feels like you're just being you. There's, like you said earlier, there's no ulterior motive. It's, hey, this is what I like to play. This is what I'm going to play. And here is what I'm giving to you guys to consume. That sort
Yeah.
of idea, you know what I mean? And I think that is really important for a lot of, especially younger artists that are maybe trying to come up, and they're trying to make they're trying to shoehorn their way into the industry, so to speak, by doing the quote unquote right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever that right thing might be, but in my opinion, a lot of people, they want to hear that authentic, honest story from that musician, whether that is, whether it's, just playing the instrument itself or singer songwriters or whatever. They want to hear that honest, authentic self of the person.
I agree. I think it's a lot of the people that I've always loved to listen to or to buy their albums, going back to Marty Stewart, was just thinking about him. He was just, especially like in the 90s into the 2000s with all of the kind of big pop country stuff that was happening. He was putting out records, like The Pilgrim that was just totally out of left field and different from everything else, but it was what he wanted to do. And I've always liked musicians like that, and I feel like a lot of people do. That's there's always going to be the mass consumption of whatever is popular at the time, but
Sure.
it may or may not last. And so yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with whoever's coming up, that this next generation of players, if you start out doing what you want to do, you don't have to worry about anything else.
Absolutely. And selfishly, one of the things that I do, and one of the things I have for this podcast is, I invite people on, like I'm not really into that genre of music. I'm not much of a flat player or flat picking player when it comes to playing guitar. But it's the musical aspect of these individuals like yourself that I really enjoy the perspective. And it's so funny because everybody that I've talked to has this same perspective of just being honest and authentic. You just happen to like to play slightly different things that are just a little bit outside of the genre. You know what I mean? That's all it really is.
Yeah, that's. I think it is. You're kind of drawn to that thing. I think we all are, that really seek out different players to listen to. Yeah, it's and I like a lot of different kinds of music, and I've gotten through social media to meet a lot of to quote unquote meet a lot
Yeah.
of people that I really admire. I was just thinking, I've gotten to be on an Instagram friend with like Brent Hines from Mastodon, and
Oh yeah.
and people that, like, I love that metal side of music, and I love country stuff and bluegrass stuff, but all the players that I like, you could put them in a room and they'd get along really well, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. Well, and it's a very, I'm trying to think of a nice way to put this. Closed-minded, mindset when people only like this is my genre. This is all that I listen. You know what I mean? Like you hear that from. So I teach guitar. I hear that from a lot of my younger students. This is only what I like. It's like, hey, that's cool, man. I'm not going to tell you what you need to like or not like, but you should really check out this if you're really into alternate picking. There's some like insane flat pickers, country guys, stuff like that. You should check out some of their technique playing, and you could add it and make yourself better. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I was in that box of I only like this kind of music forever when I was younger,
I
and,
think we all
and
were,
then
man.
yeah, you do grow out of that. Some people do, hopefully, if you're doing
Well,
it right. I mean, you know, I will say my parents are still just bluegrass and country forever. And there's nothing wrong with that either. If
absolutely
you
not.
find what you like, but I think when we're talking about players and musicians, I think most of the ones that we all look up to have pretty big ears. They like to listen to a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my guys that I always go back to is Andy Wood, and I love how he starts off all his social media stuff with "Hello, music lovers," because that is,
Yeah.
it's across the board. Everybody that's here, hello, music lovers. That's kind of the
Yeah.
mantra that I've always kind of tried to approach.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, man, regardless of what style or what genre you're playing, it's the same 12 notes that we all use in Western music, man. The same
Yep.
12 notes that Mozart used are the same 12 notes that Eddie Van Halen used. So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
it's all the same, man. It's just a different adaptation and a different approach to that instrument, whatever it is.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
So, so let's kind of backtrack just a little bit. So you talked about some pretty heavy hitters that you went on tour with. What was the first thing that you like? What was kind of like the springboard for you, so to speak? What was was there a one thing, or was there kind of a culmination of things that kind of?
It did feel like stepping stones, but I would say the Opry was the big thing. Like when I
Sure.
got to play on the Opry, that was kind of the big moment. I mean, I'd been playing guitar, so I met Marty Stewart. To backtrack on that story, I met Marty Stewart at a fair carnival
Okay.
out in East
Yeah.
Tennessee. He was playing, at the fairgrounds, and I was a huge Marty Stewart fan. And I'd been playing guitar at the time. I was probably around 6 months, something like that, and
Okay.
I'd just gotten a felt guitar case,
Nice.
and so my dad somehow knew some of the security guards backstage, and beforehand had figured out a way to get me a backstage pass to go meet Marty Stewart and to get him to sign my felt guitar case. And so that was it. That's what I wanted to do. And my dad put my guitar in the guitar case. And so when we got through the line, it was my turn to meet Marty. My dad kind of took over and said, my son would love to play you a song, and so I played him the couple of songs that I knew, which were Flat and Scruggs versions of Carter Family tunes. So it
Oh,
was
okay. Okay.
Jimmy Brown the Newsboy and Wildwood Flower and Storms Are on the Ocean. But I only intended to play him one song, and it was Jimmy Brown the Newsboy was the song that I played him. And the way if you're into bluegrass and you're into country, the Flat and Scruggs version of that song has a really particular guitar part,
Okay.
and it's signature to Earl Scruggs. Nobody else played it like that. And but from my guitar teacher, that was the one song that I really wanted to learn because, again, the first record I had bought with my own money was a Flat and Scruggs record. It was Flat and Scruggs at Carnegie Hall. And I always loved Earl Scruggs' guitar playing. So I really wanted to learn this guitar solo, and I did. And so when I met Marty, I played him that guitar solo. And I knew Marty, I knew he owned Lester Flatt's guitar. And I
Okay.
knew
Yeah.
he played with Lester Flatt when he was a kid. But I didn't realize the first record that he also owned was a Flat and Scruggs record. And so there was a lot of just this kindred spirit thing that kind of
Yeah.
happened. And he
Yeah.
immediately picked up on where I had learned that guitar solo from. And so he stopped what he was doing. So he was continuing to sign autographs while I first started playing.
Sure.
And at a certain point he stopped and he turned around and he had me play him, two other songs, and then he wanted to know if I would come up on stage and play them with him that night. And so at this point, I might have played a few shows with my guitar, but it was really one of the first big times I was on stage. It was with Marty, and
That's a heck of a
so
first time.
yeah, it
First
was,
time, you know what I mean?
and play. It was a huge crowd, and I knew a lot of people there, and it was it was very nerve wracking, but. After the show, it went well, and after the show, he came back and he said, I want you to play that on the Opry. And Eddie, it was particularly, he said, I want you to play it at the Ryman. And so this was, summer months. It was a summer fair. And several months went by and I didn't hear anything. So we just kind of assumed, nothing was going to happen. But, he called, and later on, it was February the next year, he said, I want, if you can make it, this is the night, and so of course we made the arrangements and went, and sort of a long story short, that day we show up for the sound check, and I see Marty and get to say hi to him, and I'm standing backstage at the Ryman, and if you've ever been to the Ryman, we just played there last week, and I hung out in the same room, and there's two rooms off both sides of the stage, and I was hanging in one that was stage left, and all of a sudden you just kind of hear all this commotion, and there's a bunch of people backstage, just stage hands and
Of course.
people that were helping, and other artists. I remember Connie Smith was back there, and it was almost like the waters parted, and Earl Scruggs came walking through in a suit and tie, and his guitar case, and which already, because Earl, if you're not familiar with Earl Scruggs, he was known as a banjo player. I mean, he was the guy that started this bluegrass music thing, with the way he played the banjo. But it kind of set off a little bit of an alarm when he had his guitar case, and then of course I find out that he's going to play on our song, and play his guitar part while I play his guitar part back to him.
Right.
And so that was definitely the night. That was like the lightning bolt sort of went off. And I mean, it had before then. I knew that I wanted to do this, but I
Sure.
think then I knew that I had to do this. It's like it just had to be that way. And yeah, so that was a biggie. And then probably 6 months after that was when I met Johnny and June.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that was another one that was like that set off the trajectory, because through John and June, at June's birthday party that year, I got to play a song, and Tom T. Hall was there. He was a famous country singer.
Okay. Yeah.
He owned a studio in Franklin, Tennessee at the time, and so John asked Tom T. Hall if he would produce my first album. So I was 12, So thanks to him, I got to do my own CD, and that sort of started everything else in motion, So that little year span, from 2000, late 2001 into 2003 was really important. And I was 12, so but it was a big kind of moment for my beginnings, I guess you would
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it comes down to that same thing, and I know it's kind of cliche, but it's really about that kind of like right place, right time, and you're prepared for that right place, right time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you hadn't put in the work beforehand, really honing your skill and your craft and being passionate about that with no intention of getting to where you were, you know what I mean? Like you were just doing it because you loved the instrument and you loved the songs you were trying to play. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's a right place, right time sort of thing, but it's also being prepared to execute at said right place, right time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, both of those things are
Yeah.
equally important.
Well, it's there's a lot of people in the world, and I've tried to break this down to my friends too before when they talk about the quote unquote proverbial breaking into the world of it or whatever. One, it's not very big, and I'm sure you can attest to this more than anybody. But it's about people that but also when it comes to the talent side of things, it's like you have to be good. There's no like everybody's good now, you know what I mean? You have to find something that will set you apart. And what set you apart, I feel like, was that really that time spent honing that craft before you actually got to that point of walking backstage with the intention of maybe just getting an autograph, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that was definitely it. You know, I've thought about that because it's like if a lot of things could have went very differently. You know, like
Absolutely.
if had I not known that particular guitar break, and again, yeah, there was no ulterior motive for it. That was all I knew at the time. You know,
Right.
and you know the whole thing with Johnny and June was that I played a lot of the Carter family stuff,
Sure.
and you
Yeah.
know June's mom was Mother Maybelle, and so there was all this connection that you know and it continues to go on. You know, we happened to do a big tour a couple years ago with Taj Mahal,
Okay.
and you know, legendary blues artist, and he had recorded on our album, but it was all these just strange kind of coincidences that led to this one sort of thing, and then yeah, it's again at right place, right time, but having the skills to be there, you know, and to let it. And it's a continual thing, and you know, I'm sure there have been some other times where I've possibly been in the right place at the right time, but had the wrong, you know, skill set for the moment.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's one of those things when it comes to like the live music sort of stuff, especially, you know, playing with other people at that
Hmm.
high caliber, you know what I mean? When things happen on the fly and you have to, you know, go by the seat of your pants, you know what I mean? Like you better have a little bit of foundational knowledge and some chops to keep up, man, because it's a do or die point at that time. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is. There's no turning back at a certain point.
Yeah. But you know, and that's one of the things I think that's especially I'm going to be very specific to, you know, guitar players. I think that's why we have like like you said, you can get a bunch of guys in the room together and they all will get along just fine. I think it's because we have all spent that time in our room by ourselves honing that craft for hours and hours and hours. You know, like we all have that common coming up. You know, we might not have the same common likes as the music. We might not have the same style of music, but we've all spent the time honing the craft to be a better musician. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it all translates, you know, no matter where your background or, um, and I think you know it even just either music or the arts in general. You know,
Absolutely.
you have to work so hard to become you know fluent in a certain thing. Um, you know, it's I think that's where all the commonality comes in. It's like we've all put in the 10,000 hours or whatever that number is. You know, we've all seen the road that got to there. You know,
Yeah.
and it's that road's kind of the same no matter what you're doing. You know.
Yeah. Like you said, it's just different circumstances, different right places and right times for different people. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, we're all striving for that same goal. And when I say that too, like I'm not trying to say that every musician has the same goal as maybe yourself or maybe anybody else, but you know, you're taking that you're like kind of what you said in the beginning. We're trying to just always get better at that instrument. Now, what better means to you and me and somebody else, that's completely subjective. But
Yeah.
having that in your hand and just trying to move the needle just a little bit more every day, you know what I mean? Wherever that is going.
Yeah, yeah, that is the thing. I mean, and I think a big thing for me in particular was having, you know, realistic goals or
Sure.
you know, that can be another biggie with musicians is that possibly, you know, it's kind of the same with everything like in social media world. You see all these people that can do anything they want to do on the instrument or they
Sure.
can you know play there's a million no matter how good somebody is there's always somebody out there
Absolutely.
there's always a 12-year-old kid
Oh yeah.
somewhere out there that can out shred you or there's
Hmm.
some there's always somebody better you know and there and you know it's luckily I don't think I ever had that mentality like I wanted to be the best at playing guitar. I just always wanted to be better than I was yesterday at playing the guitar. I mean, I did. I taught at a camp last week at East Tennessee State University. They had
Oh,
a
nice.
camp
Yeah,
for 8-year-olds to 17-year-olds, and it was, a lot of it was that because in bluegrass world, especially like fiddle world, maybe not so much guitar, but it's a big competition scene. Like there's a lot of festivals that have competitions, and
sure.
it can be really disheartening. I was in one competition when I was 10. I first started playing the guitar, and I joined one of them, and I ended up winning it. I won the competition, and but the entire time that I was at that festival, I hated it, and
Yeah.
it felt horrible, and I never enjoyed that side of music, and that was a big thing teaching last week was just that, you know, it's kind of like the saying, somebody else's win is not your loss, and that's the same as seeing all these other great players should inspire, and hopefully that's what it does for everybody. It's like it seeing somebody else playing or see somebody else doing something else, and I'm in the same boat a lot of times. Like, it's kind of like the whole social media thing where it's you see somebody else's vacation and and
Sun on the
that
beach.
it wasn't that great.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I don't. It's the time we live in is awesome because we can connect with so many amazing people. It's not a personal thing, but you can have a awesome group of acquaintances online with people you would have really no business talking to any other time. But there is still that like you kind of said, that competition-esque aspect to some of the social media side. And I've never really I don't know. I did fall into that as I was younger. I think, like I said, with kind of like the genre thing, I think we all kind of do it at some level. But for me, it's like that. What's that added? Comparison's the thief of joy. Like if I'm going to
Yeah.
sit here and I'm going to watch people, especially people and players that have probably been playing longer than me, have been playing in a professional sense longer than I have such an understanding, and they're like that complete musician, right? Where they can sit in a room with other guys and just get something out, and it sounds so good just from jamming. Yeah, why am I going to sit there and compare myself to that individual? I'm not anywhere close to what they have done or the experiences they have done. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to sit here and do something better for myself. And if other people happen to like that, that's awesome. You
Yeah.
know, that's kind of the
Yeah.
mindset.
That should be it. It's like I say, sometimes it's tough, for everybody. I'll fall into it as much as anybody else, but I think that's where I have to sort of put my blinders on and just realize that it's, again, it all comes down to I want to be better today than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
And that may or may not happen, but I'm at least going to try.
Well, I've come to the realization I've me personally, I've people that follow me anywhere else know I've been kind of trying to come up with some ideas for instrumental stuff. And the thing is, I've realized I cannot sing to save my life. So what can I do? I can play guitar pretty okay. I can come up with some pretty decent melodies, and I'm going to write it. I'm going to get some instrumental tunes together. I'm going to get some demos going. The bad thing is what I was doing, this is the biggest mistake I did. I was consuming a lot of instrumental music from a lot of insane players
Oh
and then
yeah.
coming home and trying to be like, oh, well, this just sounds like crap. You know what I mean? Compared to what I was just listening to. You know what I mean? So immediately stopped that, and now it's starting to go a little better. But yeah, that was like the thing. I would come up into this room here, and I would just be like, what am I even doing right now? Like I'd have that in the back of my head, but then once I kind of just stopped and took a breath and was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna write something that I like. I don't care what it
Yeah.
sounds like. I don't care if it doesn't have 30-second notes at some breakneck speed, whatever. You know what I mean? We're just gonna come up with a super solid melody that makes me feel something, and then that's what I'm
Yeah.
gonna like. You know what I mean?
Hey, that's the most important thing. It's is the feel of it, and I think there's a couple different thoughts of that. Where it's, I think the social media thing where it's like you have to grab you have 4 seconds to get somebody's attention.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
ultimately, like, a lot of times if somebody has anything to say about, like if I'm playing a fiddle tune or something, and these bluegrassers have anything to say about it, it's like, well, you shouldn't be consuming your music on Instagram anyway. That's,
Right.
I mean, you can, and there's certainly a value in following other people, but it's still, that's not, Tom Petty couldn't have written, the waiting's the hardest part and put it on Instagram, and it possibly would have just flopped because it's going to take it a minute to get going, and so I think there's always that kind of thing. And then going back to comparisons, like I have this rule on the road with our sound engineer, because in bluegrass guitar world, we kind of all bow at the throne of Tony Rice.
Sure. Absolutely.
He's the guy, and he's always been the guy and always will be the guy. And there's been a couple shows, if we don't have our sound engineer, that they'll play some Tony Rice albums before you come out on stage, and it's like, please don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, please.
I can't come out and follow that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't set me up for failure before note one.
Right.
Even
No.
in my own brain, it's like, that kind of, that guitar playing is still the top for me. So it's like when I hear Tony play, I do feel inspired, but at certain times, I don't want to be in my own head before I walk out on stage.
Yeah, I don't think that's the correct headspace to get into before you step out in front of however many people that you're about to play for. Man.
Yeah.
That's one of those things too, man. Teaching the younger students on my end, they talk about the progress that they're not seeing, and I'm just like, dude, it's these peaks and valleys that start to happen as you start to get a little better, and they start to compress a little bit. These peaks are not going to be as high, and these valleys aren't going to be as low, and you're really going to start to fine tune and really get everything down. And that's one of the things I think is a symptom that's not good of the social media thing, is we look at these individuals and it catches our attention in that first 4 seconds. And then there's something weird that happens, and a lot of, especially younger people that I teach, in their brain, it's just like, well, I'm never going to be that good. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
you don't know that, man. This guy has been playing for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're going to sit here and say 6-month me playing guitar is not ever going to be as good as 20-year-old or 20 years of experience, yeah, you're right. At this point in time, 100%. But like you said, use that to inspire. Use that to kind of light that fire under you. You know what I mean? To, like we were talking about before, just push that needle a little bit further every day.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that. I don't, I grew up, again, early 2000s, so and where I grew up was out in East Tennessee, and up until probably 5 years ago, I think, was when my parents finally got rid of dial-up internet and got high speed. And I remember buying, to date the dinosaur that I feel like I am, I remember buying an album on iTunes and, letting my computer run for 2 days before it would download 10 songs, and so there was a lot of that stuff, like when I would listen to Tony Rice play the guitar, which was a big early influence. It could be disheartening, because it's like, how can anybody do this? And but luckily I had a lot of great, I grew up in my family didn't play music, but the area that I grew up in, there was a lot of great players.
Yeah.
And so that was inspiring for one thing, but there was definitely those moments where it's like, okay, well, I'm never going to get this. But luckily, I've always tried to just be as positive as I can with
Absolutely.
because there can definitely be that other side where it's like, I've never fully been satisfied with the way I play the guitar, and honestly, there's, that's a double-edged sword, because it does make you better every day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there are times where it's like I wish I could enjoy 5 seconds of something that I do. But it comes with the territory. It again, like it's one of those things you just want to come down to getting better.
Yeah, yeah. I think everybody kind of goes through that at a certain point, and I think it happens all the time to a lot of people, and that's why I like having people like yourself on to say things like that, especially to younger people or people that are trying to come up that feel that disheartened nature of the symptom of the internet, that culture that we have, versus also too when you're starting out and starting to play gigs and there's five people in the audience, you know what I mean, like that. Yeah, that you're putting your heart and soul into something where you're playing to the walls now, you know what I mean. I've
Yeah.
definitely been there before, and just treat it like a practice, man. That's what I always told the guys whenever we were playing. It's like, hey man, we're just playing practice, just a little bit louder and a nicer
Yeah.
stage. You know what I mean?
It's I've spent a lot of time the past several years with Tommy Emmanuel,
Okay, yeah.
and that guy is just super inspiring on every level. But to hear him talk about his early days of coming over here and playing in America. He was huge in Australia, and but he would come over here and had the same problem that we would all have, starting out. You play in, you know, Toledo, Ohio on a Tuesday night, and there's 7 people in the crowd, and but I've seen some videos of him playing those smaller shows, and it's kind of like another old adage of you don't play for the people that aren't there. You're
Right,
playing
right.
for the people that are there.
Yep.
You're putting your heart and soul into the people that did show up, and yeah, but we've all been there. I remember one time I played at Third and Lindsley in Nashville.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it was like a December 22nd or 23rd, and lonesome, man, just lonesome. 3 or 4 people at the bar, and but it was a fun show. I had a good time, and but I do remember I have remembered those strange shows that happen, and everybody has them. Unless you just go from 0 to 100 really quick,
Yeah.
and that's pretty rare. That would be exceptionally rare.
Yeah. Well, and I've definitely been there before too. I did the lunchtime gig in Nashville for a long time, just filling in for singer songwriters, and some of those smaller, more intimate gigs were the most fun though. Like you just said,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like you get the 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7 people that are really digging what you guys are doing, and those are the most fun people to hang out with.
That is, I would argue, that's better than having 2,000 people out there that are really, restrained, and you don't know if they like it or not.
I'll be real honest, man. I've never played for a huge crowd, but the crowds that give me something back every time I've played, they're giving back. Those are the best shows ever. Like
Yes.
it could be like I just said, 5 people, and if we have that energy exchange between the musician, the consumer, back to the musician, dude, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
That's what that's what makes playing live the best. That is it right there. It doesn't matter, and the number of people playing is almost like that stupid validation of numbers that people worry about online. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It doesn't
exactly.
matter if you're playing to a 5,000 cap auditorium or whatever. If everyone's just sitting there all boating with their arms crossed, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be a little weird for you to kind of be like, okay, well, here's the next one, I guess.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it is just, and it's funny how it changes, and I'm sure there's you know, some explanation for the phenomenon, but it is like you could play. There's no telling, the way a show's gonna go,
no,
and I kind of
no,
love that too. There's
yeah,
you can't count on anything in the music industry. If you're, I think that was a Chet Atkins quote. If you're wanting anything out of the music industry, you're in the wrong business.
very true, very, very, very true. I kind of wanted to talk about it. I've just recently really gotten into some more fiddle tune stuff and whatnot, and I heard a quote. I can't remember who I heard it from, because everyone likes to talk about the speed and precision that players that have that sort of thing. And I wish I could remember who was talking about this. Anyway, it was something to the effect of, I never think about how fast something is. It's just the tune. That's just
Yeah.
what it is. You know what I mean? And having that mindset in my head now, I'm like, because I was thinking about that before. It's like, oh man, I need to get my right hand so much faster. I need to get it so much faster. How do I get it faster? Do I do meaningless, scales and different alternate picking workout things, or can I just find something that I find really interesting that happens to be really fast and try to learn it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of like a mind shift that I've had in the past like month or two of like, well, I don't need to just work on just drilling exercises. I need to find some music, consume it, and be like, wow, that's super rad. I need to figure out how this is happening right now. Is that kind of like the and I might be completely speaking out of turn here. Is that kind of like how it's the culture in that world? Because I'm so out of it too.
I would think I'll speak, from my own perspective. It is I would say a better chunk of it is that is
Okay.
like fine because like I remember when I was a kid working on speed stuff, um, a big song, and it was just a song that I liked. It was Sally Gooden from Tony Rice's Unit of Measure album,
Okay. Yep.
and the song itself is like 8 minutes long and it's blazing fast, and I bet I worked on that thing for a year, like
Oh
every
yeah.
day, because it's like just playing at that tempo, playing rhythm guitar, full strum, doing the whole rhythm, bluegrass rhythm correctly. Um, you play that for 3 minutes, it's a workout, but for eight, it's like,
Your
and
arm's about to
then
fall off.
do Tony's break in the
Right.
middle, and that break is 3 minutes long, and it goes all over the place, and so that was one of those things where it's like I sat in front of my computer and would just hit the space bar to play it and pause it real quick, and pick out every note, um, and that was one of those things that yes, it tricked. It was a. I never sat down to learn that and thought of it in the context of I'm going to learn this to get faster. It
Yeah.
was always just that I thought, hey, I really like this song, and then it tricked me into playing faster. Having said that, a few years ago, like I started having a lot of arm issues, like with
Hmm.
my right arm, not so much my left arm, but a lot of right arm stuff, and I had to really dissect like my right hand stuff. And so there's more kind of right hand alternate picking, cross picking things that I do that I practice for speed, and a lot of it is a mental block where it's like you get in these places where the songs are just flying. You get into a jam, everything's a million miles an hour, and especially in bluegrass world, that's the bread and butter of the
Oh,
bluegrass
absolutely.
guitar fiddle tune
Absolutely.
world is here's another fast song that sounds like the last fast song, and but when you play those for 6 hours at a jam session, and it can just be overwhelming. And I always had that thought, like it became more evident whenever I started playing in smaller ensembles. So like when I started doing the duo shows with Rob Ikes, it became really evident that for a long time in my life I played too hard and with too much sort of intensity, or just with more energy than I needed to put into it. I mean, you want to have, it's a fine line. It's a balancing act between having energy that's good energy versus all this bad energy that
Sure.
that you're wasting. And I was wasting a lot of it, and especially in my right hand. And it came from years of playing. It's kind of the same. Would be the same if you played electric guitar with 13 gauge strings on it, and you tried to get louder than the drummer or something,
Right. Right.
and you just beat yourself. And in bluegrass, a lot of that was like being louder than the banjo player.
Hmm.
And so I played really hard for a long time. And so I think for the last probably 10 years, it's been me correcting that. And
Sure.
working on. And but also all these these little techniques or these things that I do with my right hand have helped with speed. But again, I think to the greater point is like the first part of that, where it's like you just pick out something and just by chance it helps you speed up.
Yeah.
It just, that's a secondary thing,
Yeah.
is that, and I think you're getting a lot more out of that than you are really just drilling through scales and all that stuff. That's a good thing, and it's kind of like the right place, right time for the right gig situation. When
Right.
we're talking about bluegrass right hand technique, the organic, just jamming along. I mean, I said earlier that I grew up around a lot of musicians, and I did, but still, like I would go to jam sessions on Saturday night, but that left 6 other days where I was just sitting around playing by myself.
Right.
And so I played along with a lot of records or CDs or music on the computer, whatever, but I would try to pick out stuff, like Tony Rice albums or J.D. Crowe or stuff that had great timing, and try to work on that side of it, because that's the biggie too, is that playing in time. A lot of people will focus on everything else but that, and that's
Dude.
the most important thing.
I will tell you, one of my favorite things to do for some of the students that are getting out of that like beginner phase into that intermediate level is do like something really simple with like a 60 BPM, and do quarter notes, eighth notes, triplets, and 16th notes, and just see how we're playing, and see how we're listening to the metronome, and you will quickly see how out of time you are with just a simple exercise like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, and I love it, because a lot of the students that I've done that for, they hate it, absolutely hate it, because it's frustrating, and you're trying to listen, it's something they're not used to doing, but then it's so beneficial in the long run, man. Like that speed is so secondary, like you said, to like a precision and accuracy sort of thing on the instrument instead. Like if you have precise note placement, you're accurate and you're articulate, that speed's going to come over time, man. Like
Oh
that,
yeah.
that's just a byproduct, you know. I really appreciate that aspect from a lot of players too that I talk to, about how no one ever talks about playing fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No one ever talks about that. Everyone's just like, I really enjoyed this type of music. This is what it was. I really dove into it, and I just ended up getting to a point where I could play it at that breakneck speed, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is like you're absorbing it by osmosis.
Yeah.
It's not intentional. And I've run across it's the same with, I'm sure it's the same in like the speed metal world or
Sure.
or whatever, where there's always going to be the headhunters out there that are
Absolutely.
that's in everything. What is it's the opening page in the Tony Rice book, but it's a Charles Mingus quote about Charlie Parker, and it said, if Charlie Parker was a gunfighter, there'd be a lot of dead gunslingers, because it's like there's all these people that always want to, play faster than the next person or whatever, but I think a lot of us that are still doing it, because at a certain point that gets old. That's got to get old.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the music. So,
Yeah.
I think the best things you learn are just from absorbing it,
For sure.
as organically as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we wrap up the main episode, what we got on the horizon for you for the rest of the year? We're about halfway through it now. So what's on the horizon for you, man?
Well, continued. There's a lot of touring happening. We're kind of off for the next little bit. I'm working on a new instructional guitar course.
Nice.
Filming that next week, and then our touring begins back up in August. We're on the road with Little Feat for half of
cool.
August, so that's fun. And then just kind of busy the rest of the year. I'm working on a solo record, and that should be out, sometime next year, hopefully.
Very cool.
And doing some solo shows, doing some duo shows. So yeah, just kind of continuing the cycle.
Yeah, train keeps rolling, man. It's
No matter what.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap this up, where can everybody find you at?
Let's see. So I've got a website, it's TreyHensley.com. All of my social media stuff is just at Trey A. Hensley. And yeah, so that's about it. And I'm, like I said, I'm in a duo with Rob. IXR thing is Rob and Trey.
Awesome.
But primarily my thing is, Trey A. Hensley.
Cool. Well, I'll have all those linked down in the show notes. So if you guys want to check out any of the awesome stuff from Trey, go ahead and scroll down to the show notes and they will be right there at your fingertips to click on and check out everything. Hey, dude, I really appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. It's been great to talk with you.
Absolutely. Well, for Trey, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up and we will check you guys next week on Man the Helm podcast.